are here for the 10th episode of Reinventing School. This time, we hopefully are going to have some fun. This episode is about the intersection of play and learning, and we have assembled a group of experts from really very different places. So say hello very briefly to Jordan, who is in Northern California. Say hi, Jordan.
Hi.
And what grade are you in?
I'm in 4th grade.
Very good. And do you know Nathan? Are you guys in the same class, same teacher?
Yeah.
Okay,
We
so
are.
go ahead.
Hi, Nathan.
Hi.
Same school?
Yeah.
Say thanks to your teacher. He was the one who set this up.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Call your teacher Greg. That's cool.
Right? Hey, Lenore, so tell us about you a little bit.
Let's see. I live in New York City. You guys are 4th graders now. How old are you? Like 9, 10? How old?
I'm 10. I turned 10 in April.
Okay.
I'm going into 5th grade.
Okay, yeah. And how about you, Nathan? Same? 9, 10?
I'm 10. I turn 11 in December and also going into 5th grade.
Okay. Well, when my son was your age, when he was in 4th grade, before the summer, he started asking me and my husband if we would take him someplace that he'd never been before in New York City, where we live, and let him find his own way home on the subway. Does that sound kind of fun? Cool? At all? Just nod along. Say, yeah, that sounds so great. Oh, yeah. Say, yeah. Yeah, see, everybody agrees. And so one sunny Sunday, I took him to a fancy department store named Bloomingdale's, and I left him there in the handbag department after I told him it was the day to do it, because Bloomingdale's department store is right above a subway stop. And I went one way, and our son Izzy went down into the subway, took it a couple of, I don't know, maybe a couple miles, came out of the subway on 34th Street, if you've ever heard of 34th Street, like Miracle on 34th Street. And then yeah, you have? Okay. Well, so you know, it's a cheerful street. And then he had to take a bus across town. And when he came into our apartment, he was levitating because he was really proud that he'd been allowed to do something that he felt ready to do, that we believed in him to do. And I wrote a newspaper column about it because I'm a newspaper writer, like some of the others here today. And 2 days later, after I'd written Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone, I was on the Today Show, MSNBC, Fox News, and NPR, defending myself. And now if you Google America's Worst Mom, you can find out the nickname I got for doing that. And so I started a blog and then a book and then what some might consider a movement called Free Range Kids that says our kids are smarter, safer, stronger than our culture gives them credit for. Although I think people on this webinar give them a lot of.
How old was your son at the time? And Lenore is frozen, so we're going to find that out in a second, that answer. Stephen, hello. I am going to hold up the book that I got.
And then gradually.
Wait, okay.
He was 9 at the time. That's why I was so happy to see Jordan and Nathan. And now he's 22, so he lived to tell the tale.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that's it. So Free Range Kids grew into the nonprofit called Let Grow, which is promoting independence as a critical part of childhood. And part of independence is what we're talking about today, just the chance to go out and play without somebody always telling you what to do. Probably sounds pretty good to you guys.
Thank you. So I know of Stephen because I have this book that I have kept on my shelf since 1990, which is sort of intersects improvisation, play, creativity, a little bit of spirituality, a little bit of being gifted in arts and the like, and a whole lot of history of how we sort of made progress as humans in those domains. Do I have that about right?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I appreciate that. And since we're holding up books, I'll hold up the new book, which is called The Art of Is, which is how free play has morphed 30 years on. Because I feel that the thing, it's a little hard to describe what I do because I do so many things. But kind of the core is that I'm an improvisational violinist, and I go, or at least until the pandemic, I went around the world helping people to create improvisational music and other art forms, theater, dance, all kinds of things, without needing a composer, or that is by being your own composer, create literature, being your own author, and so forth. And I mean, this is kind of an interesting year for me because it's 50 years on since I published the first article I wrote about play. In 1970, I wrote an article called Ends, Means, and Galumphing in a publication called American Anthropologist. And so I've really been obsessed by play, really interested in play and the way it becomes art and culture and everything we do for a very long time. And it's also 70 years since I was a baby. And the most important thing that I teach grown-ups, kids, whoever I work with in the arts, is that the thing that has given us, whether we've practiced a musical instrument or a sport or any other expressive form, the experience that we have that gives us the ability to practice those things is that we were babies. And when we were babies, we could make every sound of every language in the world, as well as every language that has not yet existed in the world. We have the ability to be any shape. We have the ability to imagine and do. And as we grow up, a lot of those abilities they don't really disappear, but they go underground.
So let me stop you for a sec.
Yeah.
I want to point at Nathan and Jordan. Do you think you're more of, because you're the perfect age to ask this question, are you more of a young kid who still plays and doesn't worry too much about the structure of the world? Or are you growing up and you go, yeah, I don't really play anymore unless it's organized? Like, where are you on that spectrum?
Well, I guess I think I still play a lot, but at sometimes I think I'm like, I just don't know. I feel like I'm just a little more grown up, but I play a lot still. Like I used to play a lot more, but I still play a lot.
When you say play, do you play video games or do you just free, like do whatever you want? How structured is it?
Well, I sometimes I play video games, but I also do play outside and just like run around, like play Legos or other things like that.
Do you ever play without something you had bought in a store?
Yeah, I sometimes play with my imagination. Like sometimes I just I find a stick and I pretend it's like a sword or something like that.
Cool. Nathan?
Well, I really like sports a lot. I play a lot of sports. I mean, it's good to pay attention to like the news and maybe listen to the people on the radio a little bit to kind of just like figure out what's going on. But also, I mean, I would rather play like a game of football with my friends than like sit in the car and listen to the radio.
Got it. Becky, you interact with a lot of kids in a lot of different ways because you are at what I think is the world's largest children's museum. Do I have that right?
That is
Indianapolis.
correct.
So
Yeah.
I mean, what fun. How do I get that job? But tell it, what do you do and how do you end up doing it?
So I am at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, and we are the world's largest children's museum, and that's by square footage. So I joke that we have to add on every couple of years to keep that designation. But so I actually started out my career as a fifth grade teacher, and I taught fifth grade math and science. But I loved, and I was just drawn to informal education as an individual, always looking for opportunities to go to a museum, be in the woods, just having that free exploration. And so then, and I had no idea that that was something that was a career, that was something that I could do with my education degree. So family moved us to Indianapolis, and I was like, hey, there's this children's museum. I could be a teacher there, and 13 years ago, fell into the world of informal education. And what we do is we are that intersection between learning and play. And we also really are focused on family learning. So we want, it's not just kids playing, but we want families to play. So we're really known for immersive environments. So we have this fabulous paleontology exhibit, Dinosphere, which we don't just have the fossils on display, but we have a sound and light show. So you're hearing sounds around you. We change the lighting. So sometimes it's morning, sometimes it's night, but we also have all of the plants that you would see. So you really, when you're walking through there, you can start to imagine yourself, I'm walking with the dinosaurs. And we try to craft opportunities for kids to just follow their imagination, become a dinosaur, be a paleontologist, whatever they want to do within that space. And we have both arts and science, but so a lot of my work is with schools and really translating that experience of being in the museum and having this free choice to how does that interface with a classroom, which is much more structured. So it's a pretty cool job. I do lots of really, really fun things.
Very cool.
Great job. Oh my God.
Right, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
So-
She's figured it out.
My struggle always throughout an entire career has been I've really struggled to figure out what part of it is work and what part of it is play, because almost all of it has felt like play. I mean, yes, there are days as an executive where we're not necessarily playing a game I want to be playing, but for the most part, I surround myself with people, kids, who I want to be with. We do cool stuff. We invent things. We try things out. We don't take no for an answer. We imagine things. And when I tell sort of people who don't do the creative educational side, whatever, that's what my life is, they look at me like, you're kidding me. I'm like, well, why would you choose to do anything else if you had the opportunity, Stephen?
Yes, well, I mean, I'm sort of in the same boat that you're in, Howard. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
very,
Great
very,
jobs.
yeah, I've been very fortunate throughout most of my life that my work is my play. Now, listeners might then ask, well, how do you make a living? Because everybody needs to eat, everybody needs a roof over their head. And what developed in my life is that as you described, the hours that you put in as an executive in your organization, there's the sacred and the secular, as I came to call it. I've done lots of things. I've done lots of jobs for money throughout my life, some of which involved being an academic, some of which involved writing computer software and various things. So when I was writing free play, I was fortunate enough to live for a few months in an artist colony in the Southern California mountains. It was a small cabin, no electricity, no phone, Clivus Multrum toilets, kerosene lamps, and all that. And even though I was living in this retreat and playing music and writing and doing my play, I still had to write letters and interact with the world and pay bills. And so I was sitting at this table where I was writing my book and doing music, and these bills were kind of throbbing on the table. They didn't belong there. So I drove into the nearest town, which was about 10 miles away. I bought a card table and I brought it into the room and put it at the other end of the room. And now I had a sacred desk and a secular desk.
You separated work and play.
I separated work and play geographically within the room.
Jordan, do you separate work and play?
Yeah, I definitely do. Like when I'm outside, I don't really think about work at all. And like when I'm playing with my friends or playing football or just like shooting around with my parents and my sister, I really don't really think about work. When I'm working, I try to study as hard as I can. So
my father, who produced a network television show called Concentration, which you'll remember.
You did?
Yes.
Wow.
So
Okay.
this is a television game show. It was on for a long time, but it involved
looked like
picture
this.
puzzles, rebuses. It involved a picture of an apple plus a letter plus a. So he could be in the middle of anything. We could be at services. We could be at a wedding. We could be at a funeral. And if an idea came into his head, he'd have to stop everything and write it down because he was afraid he would lose it.
That's why he made a show called Concentration.
Well, there you go. It's just the sort of amazing thing where there's a moment when you know that you are at peak creativity. And if that moment happens in the middle of math class, but you're thinking about something else, is that a distraction or is that the best thing you could do? Let me give you one more example. Jim Jenkins, who created and produced the Nickelodeon series Doug. Do you know Doug? Is that familiar? Is a friend. We both produced shows at the same time. And he would say that when he was bored in class, he would do cartoons in the, in the margin of his notes.
Doodles, yeah.
Doodles, which turned out to be the most important part of his career development, because what he was doing was inventing cartoon characters, and he later went on to produce a very popular cartoon show. So, Nathan, tell me about the biggest waste of time that people say, what are you spending your time doing that for? Like, what do you do that, like, adults look at it and go, or you look at it and go, why am I doing this? Jordan, you want to jump in while Nathan's thinking?
Or something to do outside, or something you do while you should be, quote unquote, paying attention at school.
Lenore, do you?
Yeah, I mean, this is like my sweet spot that you are stumbling into right now, and I can't wait to actually interview you when this is done, because what I'm interested in lately is the line that many people can see from what they did as a kid just for fun, whether it was doodling or playing card games, or in my case, I desperately wanted to start a phrase. I wanted to start a catchphrase, and I would wear pins with different words on them, trying to get other kids your age to use them, which they didn't. But now Free Range Kids is in the Oxford English Dictionary. So I think that there's often if you have free time and you're wasting it, nobody was grading me on these stupid pins. I don't know where they are now. They weren't very attractive. They didn't win me many friends. But if you're doing something just because you love it, that is play. And it's a way to find your way to what you love. And I will give you my favorite example of this, if I may, not me, about somebody else, okay? I'm going to tell you what he did as a kid, and then you have to guess who he is, okay? I met an executive, big-time executive, at a conference, and I only had a couple minutes with him, and I said, is there anything that you did as a kid just for fun, just, playing, that you can see yourself sort of still doing? And he said, no. So then I said, I'm a reporter by trade. So I said, can you think of anything? What did you enjoy doing? He said, I like to play. I'm like, okay, is there anything a little more specific that you did that you're sort of still doing? And he says, well, come to think of it, he grew up in Miami. Miami has a lot of fruit trees, right? The Florida fruit tree, there's oranges, there's I don't know if there's apples, but there's a lot of fruit, and some of it falls to the ground on the other side of the fence, which means the public sidewalk, even when it's privately owned tree. And so he would pick up this fruit that fell onto the sidewalk and put it in his little wagon, and then he went around the neighborhood and sold it. And do you know what he does today? Do you know who he is? Want to take a guess? Yeah, Nathan, who?
Don't raise your hand.
I want to, yeah, really, God forbid, yes.
Answer.
What do you think he does?
Unmute.
Oh, yeah, you're mute still.
I think that he might be like a salesman.
He is, of other people's stuff, right? He is, and his name is Jeff Bezos. Okay, that's the guy who runs Amazon, which is only about selling other people's stuff. So I just
Jordan,
thought...
what do you think about that?
He's disappearing.
Jordan, what do you think about that?
Oh.
Yeah, you, Jordan.
I didn't really hear what you said.
What do you think about that? You were smiling and laughing.
Oh, well, I just didn't know it was Amazon, because a lot of my friends and me are like, we like Amazon, and I kind of, because my mom kind of like tells me about that guy, but I didn't really know that much about him, so I didn't really know like that he, like, when he was a kid, he sold fruit.
Yeah, for fun. You know, basically, he
Yeah.
was taking other people's stuff that was on the sidewalk and going around and making it into a little business. And I've talked to, you know, an astronaut who loved going out and exploring in the woods. I know a lot of us do that. Somebody was mentioning that in the chat box. I talked to a woman once who said that, well, she really loved what she did as a kid, which was she would gather all the neighborhood children onto her driveway and they would put on a play. So she would, you know, say, okay, you're going to be the robber and you're going to be Robin Hood or whatever it was. And so she loved doing that, assigning the kids their roles. And she said, but I don't do anything like that now. And I said, what do you do? And she's head of HR for Cliff Bar. HR is what it stands for, human resources. And those are the people who are in charge of like hiring you and saying, okay, you're going to work in the office and you're going to work in the shipping yard. So really, she's still assigning people their roles. So I think that so much of the time we think that kids have to be playing something that we've organized for them. But if you give them free time, they can find their way. I think, Becky, you were saying something like that yourself, that you try to make maximum opportunities for kids to figure out what they like.
Yeah, and it you know, something that's really important to us is, and important to me too as a parent, not just as an educator, but is allowing kids to follow the path, follow where their ideas take them. And I think it's really interesting, you know, talking about what did you do as a kid and what do you do now? I think of two things. I had a worm farm in my basement.
Gotta interview you.
I had one of those.
I was fascinated with the earthworms and I would dig them up constantly. And so I took this old cooler that my dad had gotten a shipment in and I researched how do you grow worms in your basement. And so I had that forever, but it was just really that following my interest. And I also got in trouble as a kid.
That's always good.
Yeah. Ideas of mixing paint and glue and what would happen. But
I can't believe it. I mixed glue too. I mean, that's so weird.
I know. And I think the reason I got in trouble is I let it fall down the chair and there's a big pink spot on my carpet forever.
Oh, that is bad.
You know, I think about, and so now that's what I do, is giving kids the opportunity. And, you know, also try to translate that into the classroom. I mean, it has to be a little bit more structured, but how can you I try to work with teachers, how do you give kids the opportunity to follow those paths that are interested in them? And we work with a lot of really young children too. And so it's, you know, helping them figure out, how do you pretend to be an astronaut? How do you
Right, or a lion, yeah. Very cool.
That's really interesting. Have you ever heard of Reggio Emilia schools?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We have a gallery in our museum. It's for our it's Playscape, our young early childhood. And we really based a lot of that exhibit on Reggio. And so the kids are using real paint. We have lots of natural wood, natural light, and it's one of my favorite spaces. So
I'm going to stop everybody for a second because we are going to take a break and take a look at some of the episodes that are coming up, and we'll be right back. Jordan, when you have nothing to do, what do you do?
Usually when I have nothing to do, I either read or I do like just weird stuff outside. Like sometimes, like when I was a little kid, I was really curious, so I mixed milk and water and I tasted it and it tasted disgusting. So like I learned that, and like
it's my favorite.
And like sometimes I'd try to make like new colors, so I just mixed together like ink, glue, paint. And it would be really weird and like sticky and gooey. And like one time we accidentally like stained something. Like I think we stained some of the wood outside, like our wood chips. So like that wasn't that good.
And the other question, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. I want you to think about how that might affect what you do for your life as a career or as fun or whatever. But Nathan, tell us about you. When you have nothing to do and your parents are like, find something to do.
Which is probably a lot of the time
Yeah.
recently since everybody's home
Yeah,
with the
everybody's
pandemic.
home.
Yeah, but unmute yourself or we won't ever get to hear you.
Well, usually my parents, like, they tell me to, like, they're like, find something to do. And I just sit on the couch usually, and I just sit there for like a few minutes. And then I kind of just like look around, and then I see something. That's what I want to do.
What, like what? What might you want to do?
Sometimes I kind of just sit down and I'm just stuck, and I look over at like a pile of books that I have like read a lot, and then I walk over to the bookshelf and find like a new set of books.
What about making something? Do you make stuff?
Well, I like to play with Legos. I like using like the more technical pieces where like they spin and like they go up and down.
Good. Stephen, this is going to sound like a silly question. When you have nothing to do, if that's ever happened, what do you do or what would you do?
Well, that is a silly question, and I love it. It's the question. Just a moment ago, Lenore, I think it was Lenore whose phone rang a second ago. Is that
It
right?
wasn't mine. Mine actually sounds quite different. It's
Oh,
klezmer
okay.
music.
Well, somebody's phone rang. And so I'm a musician. So, like some people might regard that phone ringing sound as an annoyance that doesn't belong in this meeting that we're having. But to me, it was quite interesting. You know, it was two rings and they had this wonderful trill to them and it had a certain sound. And I mean, wherever we are surrounded by infinite amounts of information. You know, you don't have to pick up the phone and answer it to be interested by the sound of the phone ringing and to maybe turn that into something else, you know, or to, even if you're not a musician and you don't turn it into a sound, it does something to your attention, just like when Jordan was talking about mixing up glue in paint and stuff like that. You know, the thing that's wonderful about what we play with is the way it captivates our attention and brings us. You know, on the one hand, it brings us to ourselves, but it also brings us into the world where that phone is ringing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you mentioned before when I told you about the sacred and secular desks, Howard, you said, well, you separate work from play. But of course, when you're in the place of work, you're constantly captivated by things that you see and hear and feel that take you into the place of play. And similarly, the place of play, you know, the places of work and play are constantly nourishing each other and fertilizing each other in various ways because our ears are always open and our eyes are open and our other senses are open.
So let me ask Nathan and Jordan. Do you think school is mostly a place of work or mostly a place of play? How would, if you had 100 points, would you split them 50-50 or would you put more in one or the other?
That's kind of a hard decision because, I mean, like at school you can socialize a lot, like not really a lot, but you make friends through school. Like I socialize with Nathan at school, like we're friends. And I play at recess, and I mean, I think school would probably be like 60 points fun more than the learning because you have to socialize.
It's a good school.
Really, like, be able to focus. Like, if you had just school the whole entire day, you would have so much energy you wouldn't have to, you wouldn't know what to do with.
Nathan, how about you? Where are you going to put the points?
I think that school is more has like 60 points and play has 40 maybe because you still do get to play with your friends, but at school there's like different restrictions than as if you were playing in the woods or something. Like you can't pick up with sticks and have like a fake sword fight, but if you're in the woods you could do that. You could like climb in the trees and do all that in like the woods. Or
So how are you feeling about distance learning? Where would you put the points in there? Would you say that distance learning is 60-40 also, or do you think it's a different amount? Jordan, Nathan, whoever's ready.
Well, I think that distance learning, it would probably be, if you mean like the school, would this just the school part, not just like the whole entire day. I bet the school part would be 100% school, because you can't really socialize over a computer when you're doing schoolwork.
That's how I feel about, so I just have to say, that's how I feel about work now that we're all on Zoom calls. All the fun of like hanging out and, you know, stopping by somebody's desk and just having a casual chat and finding out something fun or interesting has been replaced by exactly what Jordan's talking about. It is just 100% work.
Nathan, what do you think?
I agree with Jordan.
Okay, that's fine. Becky?
So
you're going to be reopening on Monday, right?
Wow.
You're among the brave. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but where do you, you're in a funny place because you're not school and you're not completely an entertainment venue. You live in between. So if I were to ask you that same question and put the points in each basket, what do you think the institution of the museum is, and what do you think your job is? What would the numbers look like?
So I would say probably for the institution, we'd be like 80 to 85 fun and probably 20 to 15 on the education, but it's sort of sneaky education. So so while we have classes and things, it's always really, really fun. It was interesting, in terms of my job, I was gonna say pre-COVID, I would probably say my job is 60% work, 40% fun. But what was interesting for me and for my team as well is, so suddenly we're all at home and we were doing a lot of producing content for families. So for me was showing science experiments. So all of a sudden I was spending my days with my daughter. We were testing science experiments right and left. And it was so different from what I normally did. It was really inspiring. And my team also told me that all of a sudden we weren't in the place that we consider work. And so they felt they really had the opportunity to become more creative. And so now we're switching and doing virtual programs. And so it's like they had a new challenge and really could start to explore new areas. So they actually found they're more creative. Now we're at the point where we just miss each other, but sort of for a while, we definitely felt like we were more creative because we had kind of broken some of those routines.
Interesting. One of the things that's really bizarre, and I'm curious what everybody thinks about this, creative people, creative professionals, people who make a living through their creative skills, abilities, and all that. This isn't that different for us in that, and we don't have audiences, but apart from that, I'm always making stuff up. I'm always sitting in the house and reading the book and going, why don't I write something? Or why don't I try this? Or why don't I practice? Or why don't I do some artwork or whatever? And instead of doing that, I'm doing exactly the same things. So
what do you mean?
My life hasn't changed that much.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, mine neither.
Right. So Stephen, explain sort of how creativity or the creative professions prepare you for a different kind of socializing and for this period in particular.
Well, it's really, I mean, first of all, I have to say that anything that I can say out of my own experience is not really fair to many people who might be listening, because I am fortunate enough to live in a house in the country where I can go outside and walk in the woods during the pandemic. I'm fortunate enough to have a studio that I work in. that's in my home, and it has all kinds of instruments and electronics and all kinds of toys. So I realize that I'm privileged to be able to play at my work, which is my play, which is my work, in a way that a lot of people can't. But even if you don't have those privileges, if you're a creative person, which can really mean absolutely anybody who might be fascinated by the challenge of the blank piece of paper sitting in front of you on your kitchen table that you might draw on or write on or whatever, that you are able to move into the blankness of that piece of paper, into that place where nobody's telling you what to do, nobody's telling you what to say, even within just that sphere. And you have the freedom to be yourself and say what you want to say and imagine what you want to imagine and share it with other people in whatever way you can, even in these limited circumstances.
Jordan, is this a better way to learn than school, or is a school better? Like, how do you process that? What do you want to do when you grow up? I didn't ask you that, and I meant to before.
Well, personally, if this will happen, it's not very likely, but I'm shooting for my goals to be a NBA player, but if not, maybe like an architect or just a baseball player or anything, just like sports wise, or just like designing something. Because yeah,
Okay, and Nathan? And we can't hear you. You got it. Yeah, just leave it unmuted. We don't care if there's noise. Unmute. Yep.
Well, I like to be in the water a lot, so it would be fun to be like a water polo player or
A fish.
Or a fish.
Dolphin, perhaps, right? If you want to keep the brain.
Or like a job that will like let me still have like a lot of like sports involved in it.
Now, your parents, I'm trying to remember, your father does what?
Well, my dad, he used to own a surf shop, and it's called Neighborhood. He doesn't really do it anymore. He kind of like works for people. He drives a lot, and he has a lot of phone calls. And my mom is a lawyer that works for the Hoopa tribe, I'm pretty sure.
Good. Okay, thank you. So, Lenore, somewhere in here, there's a connection between all of these funny, well, I'm a special case, as Stephen says. My life is different, but so am I, and so is Becky, and so are you. And I suspect so will Jordan and Nathan be. So connect us a bit between play and learning and school, because my view of this is a lot more optimistic than school beats the fun out of you. I think there's something more going on. Can you take us there?
Yeah, well, I work with Dr. Peter Gray, who wrote the book Free to Learn. And he said that something that just like hit me that was so obvious afterwards. I don't know why I didn't think about it, but it's like, why do we assume there's a difference between playing and learning? I mean, I think that's what Becky is saying at her school. I think that's what Stephen does when he's trying to figure things out and he's having fun doing it. And, you know, if you're lucky, and many of us here are, you get to be so interested in what you're doing that even whether it's writing and other people might think that's boring or painful, but if you love it and it's fun, it's playing and it can be your work. And so I'm very hopeful that because of this strange COVID time that we've had for the last several months with kids having all this extra free time, that they've been so bored, like is it Nathan who's sitting on the couch until finally a book calls out to him, or there's something to do where you go and you start, Jordan would go play with his Legos. When you're really bored and you have free time, that's when you figure out what you love to do. And I think that when these kids come back to school, I think you're going to be showing your teachers these new sides of you. You know, you've been building, you've been thinking, you've been drawing, you've been riding your bike around the neighborhood, and now you feel like the neighborhood is yours. You feel more confident and excited about going into the woods. So I think that just from this big break of structured activities into all this unstructured time, these kids are going to come back and they're going to be ready to do so much more on their own, following their interests with a teacher like, God willing, Becky, who sees what they're interested in and, you know, can help them along the path, but isn't superimposing this rigid, boring lesson that might seem like it was from another era when we go
However,
back.
as Natalie, who's watching, says, so in the chat, she says, yeah, but school has to measure it. So
Yeah.
hold on with that
Okay.
answer. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with that on top of the agenda. Stephen, you've done a bunch of videos that actually want to show a little bit, if it's okay, which combines sort of a video synthesis or some sort of a video engine with your improvisational violin work. So we picked something off the website. Is that okay for us to give a quick look? So Michael, if you can, just roll a little bit. We're just going to run about 30 seconds so people know what we're talking about, and then we'll talk about that. You really are a big kid, right? You're like, what are you doing? What are you playing with there?
Well, it's funny you were just talking about measurement.
Yeah, right.
That's
Because
where I was going.
because I mean, as upset as I can get about some of the obsessions in our society about measurement and and assessment, what was going on in that video and a lot of the work that I do is really like translating one kind of sensation into another. So the frequency of music gets translated into shapes of light, and the color of the light and the shape of the light form is driven by the music. Okay. And in psychology, they talk about something called synesthesia. And if you look up synesthesia in the dictionary, it seems like it's some kind of a weird phenomenon that a few people have where, you know, they hear music and they see colors or something like that. But actually, synesthesia is just like washing the dishes. Okay, when you're washing the dishes, you see the water coming out of the tap, you feel the water in your hands, you hear the sound. So just having any kind of experience in the world, whatever it is, whether it's work or play or mundane or special or whatever, you know, you're experiencing it through all your senses and through different media.
Okay, let me stop you there for a second. So, Jordan, you have to give Stephen a grade. He showed you his creative project and then he just explained it. Sound familiar? Like maybe that would happen in school? So give him a grade and explain why.
Well, grade, do you mean like A plus F?
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Okay.
And why? Yeah.
I think maybe B plus.
Why?
Because he just when he goes around like his work, he doesn't really just like smoothly. He kind of just like he does it for fun, and he can make money off of it. So like it really just seems like a fun job to me. And
Okay. Nathan, what about if just looking at the work itself and the explanation he just gave us, you got to grade him. You're the teacher. What are you giving him, and why?
But like, what is he like submitting this work to? Like just creative activities?
To the school machine. I don't know. We're making it up.
What like subject?
Uh,
Or like what was his assignment?
what was your assignment, Stephen?
Well, Nathan put his finger right on the question. What is the subject? Okay. And um, that's maybe sometimes is that we feel from school that we have to divide life into subjects. Now, I mean, it's really important to know something about physics, and it's important to know something about biology, and it's important to know something about poetry and music and sports and how water works and all of that. But if you look at something like water, if you're a swimmer and you're interested in water, is water part of physics? Is water part of chemistry? Is water part of music? Is water part of
Art.
math?
Art.
It's part of all those things. And so the big question is if you love water or if you love sound or whatever it is that you're interested in, is if you love the texture of glue and paint, it's not really in a subject. And real life meaning, what what you see in this room or what you see out the room, out the window of the room, isn't in a subject. Okay, it's all subjects, and all subjects are relevant to it. But in school, in business, in so many areas of life, people like to divide things into subjects or departments, and that's something that we kind of have to adapt to, but that isn't actual life, and that's where the worlds of work and play kind of clash.
I'll bet, Becky, you deal with this all the time. Is what I'm doing purely fun? Is it just a game? Do we just want to get the kids to interact and we don't really care? Do we just want to make a mess? Do we just want to laugh a lot, right? Because all those are different parts of play. So what Stephen did was enormously sophisticated, both musically and from a technology. I mean, just what you did and the way you had the frequencies visualized, really cool. But I'm glad you learned something. I don't need to rate you on how much you learned or how you learned. I'm confident that you learned. Would that be a fair? Just a yes or a no. Did you learn something when you were making it?
Yes.
Good, I'm happy. Becky, how does the world work when you're looking at, 9-year-old Stephen or 12-year-old Stephen, or you have younger kids too? How do you put them through this idea of you're going to be playing, but maybe some of it will stick?
So for us, it's really looking globally at an experience. So we know that some kids are going to be drawn to that. They want to pretend, they want to be the dinosaur, they want to be the astronaut. Some kids they want to interact with something that's going to move or be very tactile. Some kids are going to want to listen. And so really we look and we really think, see, do is our mantra. And we always look at what do we want kids to be thinking about? What do we want kids to see? What do we want them to do? Because we know that kids need all of that. So it's really looking at that big picture and that experience of what are you going to be able to touch? What are you going to be able to read about? And looking at that globally. At the same time, we always, constantly ask ourselves, how is this different from being in a classroom? How is this different from reading a book? Because we want to find those intersections. And I think one of the key pieces to our work, which I'm so proud about, is when we're creating an exhibit, we ourselves immerse ourselves in that content. So for example, we have a recreation of the International Space Station that we opened 4 years ago. I spent quite a bit of time working with Johnson Space Center and actually went there to see the astronaut training facilities so that I myself have walked through what an astronaut walks through. We regularly dig dinosaurs so that we ourselves know what it's like to be a paleontologist. So we make ourselves be kids and go and experience that for the first time, because you learn things, you have those aha moments of, I never thought about that. And then we work really hard. How do we translate that feeling that we had of learning something for the first time? How do we recreate that for kids? And I'm really proud that we do that. It's one of the best parts of the job.
So you're somewhere between pretending, simulating, doing as much of it as you reasonably can. Now, all right, so here's the weird part. I'm fascinated by this conversation. It's really cool to be talking to all of you. But in the chat bar is, where's his name, is Sadiki, who is from Casablanca, Morocco. I've never spoken to anybody in Morocco. So I really want to participate in this conversation and be the grown-up who's trying to get through all the material and treat everybody with respect. But what I really want to do is say, hang on a second, can I stop time, go play with Sadiki for a while, and then come back to you guys? Well, of course I can't, because I'm trying to be, responsible, and I'm really respectful of all of your time. But I'm guessing that all of us, have sort of a similar, like, well, that's cool over there too, because it's difficult to just focus on one thing, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that's so crazy about Zoom in particular is we're all staring at 9 boxes on the screen, and that's our world. And I want my world to be wider and bigger than that. But I have a feeling we're going to be looking at screens for the next year. I think this is going to be a very difficult time. I wish you the best of luck with opening the museum. I hope it stays open, and I know you guys do too.
We do.
Can you organize that thinking a bit about how do you deal with, I want to play, I want to socialize, I'm limited in my resources, I want to make friends. I met Nathan and I met Jordan because of an internet project. So we know each other a little tiny bit because we spent about a half hour before. That's wonderful. We wouldn't have met otherwise. But how do we think about play and learning in this crazy time we're in?
Were you asking me?
Question,
oh,
yes.
Oh my gosh. And I'm waiting like, I guess it's Steve's turn. Or like,
Yes.
How do we think, oh God, now you're going to find out how I was not concentrating. How do we do playing in this era of everybody being online?
And how do we connect that to learning? Because our exposure to the world is so much more limited.
Well, it's limited in the physical world for sure, but I'd say that, with the internet, I mean, here we are, we're talking about Mr. Sadiki, or perhaps Ms. In Morocco. I mean, that's bigger than my world was when I was Nathan and Jordan's age. I couldn't just find somebody in another country and initiate a call or chat with them. And I couldn't go, the encyclopedia was there, getting older by the year, so I couldn't find out all sorts of new things like I can with Wikipedia. And so I don't think that the screen world is that limiting, and I'm not that worried about it. I feel like, your curiosity will take you where you want to go. It's bad you guys can't play the games that you like to play so much outside. There was a study once done of kids online asked, would you rather be online or outside playing with your friends if there was a game outside? And the vast majority of kids said, I would rather be outside, even as they were online. And so there was already this diminishing world of children going out there and playing on their own. But I think, once again, the desperation of boredom and the availability of, we did a study at Let Grow where we asked 1,600 kids what they were learning now that wasn't for school. And so much of it was online. I'm learning coding. I'm learning origami. I learned how to make muffins. I'm learning how to be a better babysitter. I'm learning about the coronavirus. So there's an entire world to explore. And I think, like, what have you guys learned? Have you learned something new from the internet since you've been home? Just for fun, not for school? Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan,
I got really into like prehistoric times. Like I really wanted to learn more about the megalodon and stuff. So I started just watching documentaries about it.
About what?
The megalodon.
Okay, clue me in. What?
teach us.
Yeah.
It's like a giant shark. It's like, I think like 60 yards, something like that. I have no idea. It's kind
That's
of
why Nathan's dad isn't surfing anymore. Sorry.
It's a giant shark, but there's none left. It's they're extinct.
Oh, good.
So,
you can go back to surfing. Wow. Okay, and that was just you heard about it, and then you started exploring online about it?
Well, me and my dad, one day we were at the beach, and I was just like wondering like about sharks and stuff, and then I was like, wait, what about like the prehistoric things? Like, what type of beasts were out there? Like, what things could have like just like. I watched some kind of fake movie, but like half of it, but it was too cheesy. I didn't want to watch it.
Is that like sharks on a plane?
Yeah, it was just like, I don't know, yeah.
Wait, that's something weird just happened in my space-time continuum. How about Nathan? Did you study anything, or like not study? Study is a scary, sort of boring word. Did you explore anything or find out anything cool and new just because you were curious?
Well, I don't really spend that much time like looking up stuff on the computer. I spend my time more on calls with my friends, and sometimes we socially distance and like surf socially distance.
That seems like an easy way to socially distance, surfing. You know, you're not going to be 6 feet next to them anyhow. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so you have a way of still going out and having fun in nature, and you have a way of exploring that's online, and obviously you can both do both. But so that doesn't sound, you know, there've been other problems that the world has faced over the years, and it's a blip in your education, but it'll be, you know, it'll be this weird time to remember. But I don't think it has to necessarily be a time of dormancy. I think that kids are alive and they're going to find interesting things to do and ways to create.
Yeah. Unless they run into a megalodon.
You're right. Right.
Yeah, I just got, you know, I couldn't resist. Anyway, all right, well, we are beginning to run out of time. I feel like there's so much more we can play with here. But also, I'm still not clear on why school and play seem to be so separated, because you guys seem enormously curious, Nathan, Jordan, but this whole group of us, we're all very motivated to learn, we're all curious, we're all going to wander into things, and we continue to throughout our adult lives. And yet school isn't organized that way. And in part that's because of what Stephen is describing is categorization and the desire to put that together. There's a wonderful book it's about analogies, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, but it's written by the same people as, it's Doug Hofstadter from years ago, who wrote Total Escherbach, and it's about analogies and character and categorization, and which is the more powerful force, the ability to be able to categorize or the ability to be able to connect ideas. And in many ways, that's the fight, right? But it's also, you can't create or play without setting some sort of a boundary, right? You have to play on the field. You have to stay in the forest, whatever it is. You have to stay within your abilities. You want to go just beyond your abilities. But also, if you don't connect this dot to that dot, then the play becomes really boring. It's just not an interesting thing to do. So I just finished this rather thick book, but it's well worth tracking down. I'll see if I can find the name of it. But that's essentially the game we are all playing, I think, is how to burst through those categories. Nathan.
Well, I read a book, and it's a game where you have to push your limits, and if you don't, you're probably gonna die.
Do you remember the name of the book?
Yeah, I read The Hunger Games.
Oh.
And explain how that ties into what we're talking about.
Well, if like The Hunger Games is kind of like a fight for survival, and like if you don't use the stuff that you've learned in school and also the stuff you play, you know, like climbing trees and like having fake sword fights with sticks, you have to combine the stuff that you use to play with your friends and like the laws of like the boundaries of what you can do with the thing that you're using, basically.
And in many ways, that's the nature of play and the creative process. Stephen, you want to kind of tie that together with a bigger arc?
Well, my teacher, who was a man named Gregory Bateson,
And explain who he was and why.
He was an English anthropologist, psychologist, philosopher, biologist. He was in many, many fields.
Husband.
But the thing that connected all of those fields was the study of pattern and the study of relationship among living organisms and human beings. It's what he called the ecology of mind. And he talked about the pattern that connects. Okay, that to see the woods out there and to see the book that you're reading and to see the organism that I've become after 3.5 billion years of evolution.
Not that old.
You know, what is the pattern that connects the crab to the lobster, the orchid to the primrose, and all of them to me and me to you? And I came to Gregory first because he was a pioneer in the study of play. And he realized that when animals are playing together, they're constantly sending each other signals that say, this is play, you know. And we are constantly in everything that we're doing, whether we're in the room together or whether we're separated or connected by all these screens, you know, the screens are an interface. They're both a thing that separates us and a thing that connects us. And what is the pattern that connects the 6 of us who are talking today? With the work we do, with the play we do, with the school we go to, with the ocean that we surf in? What is the pattern that connects all the parts of that ocean, all the organisms that live in that ocean, with the megalosaurus or whatever he was that lived 50 million years ago, with the creatures that might be living 50 million years from now? You know, we're never going to know all of those things exactly, but we can play in the world in which all those things exist, in which all these different kinds of people exist. And that's what we're here for.
And those connections, and I guarantee you that each of us could come up with 20 or 30 different points of connection between one another, even though this is the first time we've met. And for me, that's a wonderful form of play. So with that, let me just note that the name of the book I was talking about is Surfaces and Essences, Analogy as the Fuel and Fire of Learning. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for an hour, hopefully well spent. Given the opportunity, I'd love to play with you some more, but this time's up. We will, however, as we usually just kind of hang out after the official end of the show. So if we want to just chat among ourselves, we are, that's sort of a nice tradition that we developed. So thank you all very much, but please do hang out. We're going to roll the credits now.
on-demand episodes, and more, visit our website. Kids on Earth contains hundreds of video interviews with students from around the world. Learning Revolution is a global collaboration network for people who care about learning. Be sure to join us next Thursday for a new episode of Reinventing School.